Okay, we're now going to consider development in terms of aesthetics. Bird boxes like this, nesting boxes, are made this way because it's the simplest way to make them. Okay, it's as simple as we take a long plank and we divide it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces normally, and by overlapping these in a particular way we can give it a bit more depth this way or whatever, but it's normally made out of absolutely standard timber, simply cut off very quickly and conveniently. A few nails in the back there to hold it together, a few nails in the front here to hold it together, and there you go, job's done. And it often is as simple as this: sits loosely on top, perhaps with some kind of a tab inside to hold it in place, or, as I suggested earlier, some version of a hinge up here to hold it on. But it's really simplistic construction, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but let's see if we can look at how we might make this more interesting. So without changing much about the basic design of the shape, we're going to stick with this idea of a backboard of some description, but we're going to have a little bit of a play around with the shape of what we've got in front of it. And the first thought that comes to my mind is, what if we turn it into a tube of some description, a cylinder? Okay, so we're still using a backboard, but now I'm thinking to myself that maybe this might actually, so let's put a screw in there holding that onto there. Let's put our hole into here. It's going to be an interesting shape, isn't it, on a curve? And again, we could still have that basic design. So this is a kind of development which is very, very easy to do, because we're sticking with the key elements, which is some kind of a box shape on the front of a backboard with some holes to attach it onto something. And then all we'd have to think about is, well, how would I actually go about making a lid for this? And it could be that the lid is actually squarely hinged across there like that, and perhaps given some thickness or whatever, so that it starts to look like something that would actually keep the water out. But it could be as simple as that. And by the way, it strikes me that if I was going to use tube for this, I might actually be using some of that brownish plastic drain pipe tube for this. So I'd colour this in, or render it quite carefully, to make it look more like that brownish plastic and less like wood. And meanwhile, of course, I could then continue with a darker colour, perhaps to indicate that this backboard is, however, still very definitely made of timber. And I'm going to do that to it. Just a few seconds worth of work. I'm not taking a huge amount of care in this, really. I don't feel as though I need to, just to illustrate the fact that, by the way, this is wood. Okay, and I could do far more if I wanted to. But there's one idea. It's as simple as that. It's a quick change. It's a visual change to the thing. Now, this idea of a cylinder gets me thinking, because if I'm going to use a cylinder, then do I really even need to have this kind of a backboard idea onto it, or can I do something different, completely different? So let's imagine this is a thin-walled cylinder like this, piece of drain pipe perhaps in my imagination initially, as a mock-up, as a model, which we'll talk more about later on, by the way. So I can use all the same elements here as I've used before. But this time I'm thinking to myself, well, what if we did some kind of a sloping roof? Okay, so we're imagining a roof that's going to come around like this somewhat, like a sort of a hat on top of it. Okay, and yeah, that could work quite well. There could be advantages to that, but we'd need to still think about how this could be attached on, but maybe we would change the design slightly. So now we use a metal strap across the back of it with a hole through there to attach on, and another one there. Okay, and again we could attach on like that, and there'd be the same thing on the other side. And there you go, again, add colour to it. So what I'm doing here is I'm playing with the aesthetics. I'm changing around the way that it looks. Of course, I could go quite simply and do some visuals onto what I've already got. So let's imagine that we're now drawing our design again. We're thinking to ourselves, how can I make that really fairly bland, boring thing look a bit more interesting? And the answer might be by simple tricks like, for instance, cutting and placing a strip of different contrasting timber in the middle of this. So I could show that by then shading in these parts to look like fairly dark wood. Okay, and then the strip in the middle, I might decide I want it to look like nice light wood. So I'll go for much lighter brown. Limited on colours here, but you'll get the idea of this. So this could be a softwood, these could be hardwoods, something like that. We're just playing with it aesthetically. Of course, you could do other things like making the whole thing out of a lot of laminated strips stuck together. There's no particular reason why you can't apply the techniques you've maybe seen on furniture or guitars or something like that and apply the same sort of thinking here. I mean, there may be some practical considerations with regard to water ingress to glued joints, but you know, it might look all right. So that would be one way of doing this. You might hate the look of that, but it's just an idea. It's just a development of an idea. Let's move on and let's think about simply giving this some kind of visual or graphical treatment. So we're not changing anything about the actual shape or anything else or construction of the box, but we're thinking to ourselves that once we've got there, perhaps what we could consider is just adding some kind of a graphic or logo to the side of it. We might even do something like, you know, an environment, so a little planet logo in the corner here, which that is meant to be. Obviously, it doesn't look very much like it, so we might then pull this over here and draw us a much better planet over here, showing how this is meant to look like the planet. The key point I want you to understand here is that it's very, very easy to develop that product aesthetically. That on its own is not enough, but that in combination with the functional development is